So lots of moments to talk about. We heard from the Obamas, of course, but a lot of other speakers as well last night, and one of them was Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth.
Yep, she spoke about using IVF to help have her children and definitely, conveyed that message to hopeful parents that that is an option. Let's take a listen.
I see you. I'm with you. And together, in November, we'll send a message. Stay out of our doctor's offices, and we'll yell at it out of the Oval Office, too. Every American deserves the right to be called mommy or daddy without being treated like a criminal.
Michelle Obama also spoke about IVF. So let's talk about how Democrats are doing at making reproductive rights a central issue, not only of the DNC here, but the campaign.
Yeah, remember when the Dobbs issue came down a couple of years ago, we talked about how this was going to be an important element of elections moving forward. We know it was in 2022 for the midterm elections. But I think what we're seeing here this week is the real nuance of that. It's not just about the right to abortion. It's about government infringing on freedom. And so now, they took an issue that used to be a Republican-held issue, this notion of keep government away from us. And they're nuancing it to say, several speakers last night saying government can help. Government can help. And I think, as we talk about the more progressive folks, they'll do that. But when they talk about government interfering and being in our bedrooms and so forth, because
personal choice.
Absolutely. And those are the kinds of things where it's like, well, they can resonate with voters who just are afraid of government or don't like government. It's going to be a thin line to walk. They have to be careful about it, but it's been pretty powerful so far this week.
Well, kind of talking along those lines of balancing progressive with more traditional, Senator Bernie Sanders spoke about being eager to work with Harris and said her policy goals were not a radical agenda, and he's known, of course, as being pretty progressive. But how do the goals that he laid out play in the swing states, do you think?
Well, we got the tip that they weren't going to run away from the progressive label on the first night when AOC was a speaker during prime time, but later in the night when the arena was full. Certainly had Bernie Sanders come here. He ran his own presidential campaign. He considers himself a democratic socialist, although independent is the label that he has in Congress. That was an interesting speech about saying it's not a radical idea. Now, he wasn't using the word radical in a sort of scholarly sense. He was using it how most people use it, to mean extreme.
Right.
In other words, it's not out of the mainstream anymore. But so many things that are progressive were once out of the mainstream and now are not out of the mainstream. Black people voting, for instance, would be one example of that. But you also think about child labor laws, all kinds of things. Right, gay marriage, right? It's not radical anymore to think about gay marriage, but it used to be. And so I think what Bernie Sanders was trying to say is this is the notion of progress, is that we take things that used to be considered away from tradition and we think about them now in a more mainstream way. And so he's trying to mainstream some of those democratic socialist ideas, but the party's not running away from it. And they're going to run away from that label. You're not going to hear them embrace the democratic socialist label. But in terms of policy positions, they don't seem to be afraid of it. They think it's going to work.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we're going to have time for our last question because it's going to dig into too much of political dynasty and all of that. But quickly, anything that stood out to you? We didn't ask you that this morning. I'm curious. You were here.
Well, I think, look, it's all about energy. Several of the speakers talked about just because this feels good right now doesn't mean we're done. Yeah. Right? Who cares the way the polls are moving? We still have 11 weeks or whatever until the election. And so it's about creating that energy to move toward night 3 and then ultimately when Kamala Harris gives her address. And when we think about that fourth night, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We got an important night tonight, too. We're going to hear from Governor Walz.
Right.
Absolutely. But when we get to that fourth night, it's going to be it's only about a month since she wasn't even the candidate.
Yeah.
And now they have the reception she's going to have. So much of this is orchestrated as working toward something that's the culmination of all of this, which is the Thursday night speech.
All right, Stephen Maynard Caliendo, thanks for being with us again.